Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on tips and tricks on Nuke Studio. First of all, thank you for joining us. I'm Juan Salazar, Creative Product Manager for the Nuke family. Second, I apologize for my voice. The fall has arrived here in London, and even if everything is yellow and red and nice, it also has brought a bit of a cold around here, so apologize for the kind of voice and a little bit of the cough that I'll have through it. So today I want to share with you some tips and tricks, and mostly we'll be looking into soft effects, retimes, and a few tips and tricks on how to review in Hiero Nuke Studio. So, alright, let's actually start this. Alright, so the first thing is I'm going to show you a few things with soft effects. And I'm going to be jumping between projects. I have about 4 or 5 projects I'm going to be jumping on throughout this webinar. So the first thing is a little bit of a review on how you can apply soft effects. So very quickly, you can apply soft effects in 3 levels. You can apply it to a shot on the timeline. You can apply it as a track effect. And if you look closely here, you can see there is a small line on top of the clips inside the clip, and that is that I added a soft effect in this case inside the actual clip. That is done by opening the clip or the source clip in its own timeline view, and you can add that soft effect as a track effect for that given source. I showed this on the previous tips and tricks, as it is very useful when you have a clip that has been adding in the timeline multiple times, for example with different retimes, and you can see it add the soft effect to both clips without having to paste it or clone it between the 2 clips. So that's the first thing, just to make clear how we can apply those soft effects. That means that we can use soft effects for really cool and clever things. For example, in this show, we are applying LUTs at a shot level and then at a sequence level. When you apply soft effects on a track, you don't need to apply it to the whole sequence as you do with a born in, but you can actually apply it to parts of your sequences. So in this case, I'm actually applying a LUT for the sequence and a different LUT for the shot. So I have a LUT for the shot, and on top of that I have a LUT for the sequence. Quite quickly, the way of doing this is I can select a group of shots that I want to assign my soft effect. I'm gonna use Shift U to put my in and outs on that sequence. I'm gonna select my track, and I can add a LUT in this case, and that gets added. I can go into my parameters, find the LUT that I want to add here. So I'm gonna go and select my sequence LUT and open, and now I just added that sequence LUT. You can see that I have added them at different levels within the same track. And this is just for me to visually have a better understanding of what is happening. You can move it around either using the mouse, or again, you can use the Alt and comma and dot to move it up and down. So that is how you apply it into the different things, into the different tracks or shot or source clip. Now in 11.2, there is a small change that we added that is kind of a secret feature that we put out. And it's the ability to clone soft effects between different sequences. On the previous tips and tricks, I actually show you how I use my workspaces to do comparison between different sequences. In this case, I was working on this show where I was doing grading for multiple versions of a some music videos that were shot in the same location. So I have a few shots of her that are actually used on the same interviews. And originally what I had to do is use this view to copy and paste the grades between the different shots. Now, what I can do from 11.2 onwards is actually copy that as a clone. So I can do Command K, or I can go under Edit, copy as clone, and now I can paste them between different sequences. So I can paste that here, and now it has applied the same grade or the same transform or soft effect that you're applying between them. And as you can see, it has the C as for cloning. Now, the cool part of this is if I open the settings for this, is I'll be able to change the grade. And as you can see, it's only updating one of the viewers at a time, but as soon as I release, it updates the other viewers. So now I have actually done cloning between my two different shots and making sure that everything matches all throughout. This is very, very useful as I move into working either in this case with different sequences for the same show, but it could be your 30-second, 60-second, or 15-second for a commercial. Okay, so that was soft effects, and the next thing I want to show you is something that has come up several times as I have visited a lot of you around the world, and I have seen a lot of people doing this. So I have opened this project, which is empty. Everything is offline due to either I moved it from different drives or I'm recovering from a project that was done before and I want to kind of reopen it and find some stuff. So it's going from my archive. So to reconnect the footage, what I have seen a lot of people do is to reconfirm the shot. So if I go to my sequence and I find my sequence, I have my offline already connected, but the rest of it is offline, including my comps from Nuke, so my NKs. So what I have seen a lot of people is go to match media and go into the project and try and match all the media. The problem of doing that is that when you do that, then what Nuke Studio is expecting to do is bring new media into a project. So you ended up with the new media and the offline footage as well. So then you have to clean up your project and everything else. So the best way of doing this is actually using the Reconnect media option. My suggestion always is go to the top of your project, right click on the project and go Clip, Reconnect Media. Find your folder, in this case is the CD Alley project, it's on my new drive, and I'm gonna say open. I'm gonna make sure it's gonna use all supported files, and I have already removed the NK on the exclude patterns. Actually, let's remove even the non-commercial. I don't have any non-commercial, but I'm gonna not exclude anything, and I'm gonna say okay. It's gonna go through it and and there you are. I got 130 out of 131 and I'm gonna say okay. And as you can see, you found my renders for the NKs that have been rendered. It found my source footage and it found my CG. So very quickly I have everything, and my project straight away is set up correctly, and I don't have any extra footage on my project, and I don't have to do any cleanup work. So that is how you reconnect your projects when you move them around in a very easy way. Alright, so just showed you how to reconnect this project. There is one more thing that I want to show you that we haven't talked too much about yet. And as you know, in 0.1, we updated the read nodes to now have the parameters on the properties. So now if I double click any of these clips, I get the properties as I do normally on Nuke, for example. So I have my file path and all the information for it. Now, what is really good about this is that now we can set up relative padding, which means I can come and set up my project, and we have changed some of the settings. So under the general settings for your project, you have obviously the name of your project, but you now also have a project directory. This project directory allows me to set up where my project is, and if I want to do relative padding, how I can set it up. So I can either set up where my Hiero's directory is, and that's going to set up the same Python script that it sets on the Nuke side when you do it on the node graph. But I can now do it as well, or I can pick a folder to where that is coming from. So I could very easily find my city alley, and instead of project, I actually want to be one folder up. So sorry, city alley here. And if I do open that, now I'm setting up that with the full path for that project. This means that I could, again, either use the Python, which is a lot easier, or I can set this up, and I'm going to then set up all my reads to be relative to this directory. So if you move your project again, or you archive, then you'll be able to unarchive it and have it ready for you to be picked up from wherever you actually put it on your network or on your system. So I'm going to use, in this case, the full path. So I'm going to use the project side, and that means that it allows me to, once I close that and I save this project, I'm going to set Control S, and now on the read, all I need to do is find that part of the path and replace it with a dot. And now that file is relative to my place. So I can actually go through all my timeline and kind of set up all my different reads the same way. And I'll be able to get all my projects set up to be relative to that directory. So now I can move it and open it in any other machine and make sure that all the systems, all the things are going to match based on these folders. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk to you guys about today is about retimes. That is something that keeps coming up every time I see people around, or actually talking to the support team is something that has been asked quite a lot. So I want to show you a few ways of using retimes and setting them up when you do transcoding and when you do create comp. In this project and in the last tips and tricks, I showed you how I set up kind of the soft effects for the shots that have been retimed. There's quite a few shots that have been retiming here, and especially there's a few shots we actually I reorganized my spreadsheet based on retiming, and you can see there's a few retime shots that I can select, but the main thing about them is actually things like this. Here at the end, it is the same shot actually put together in 4 different cuts that are one without retime, one with retime, one without, one with retime, one without. So it's how do you actually combine that and put them into a single shot as well. So I'm gonna go, I actually just put this timeline together where I have basic retimes. I actually took all those shots and put them here in order, just to kind of explain in a little bit in an easier way of how this works. So the first thing is talk about the two types of retime that we have in Nuke Studio. The first one is the linear retime. You can see that there is a value here on the side, and that is achieved either by using the retime tool here on the retime, or you can select the clip, and as I showed in the SIGGRAPH demo, that if you guys can watch it, if you have watched it, you will have seen that I showed a few other options of how to do this. You can go into editorial, retime, and change the value by numbers. There's a few options here that you can use, like keep time duration, source duration, or anchor based on the frame that you are at, or that you have your playhead at. And again, at the SIGGRAPH demo, I showed how to use the different options in the spreadsheet to work with the retimes. So if you haven't looked at that, I suggest you to go and have a look at that as well. Now, the other type of retime is when you need a non-linear retime. That obviously is the idea of using a soft effect to do that, and that's done with the time warp. So if I load I'm gonna clear my properties for a second, and I'm gonna load that time warp, and if I go into my curve editor, I'll be able to see that in this case it's actually quite linear. I have a different one, I think is this one, but it actually has some curves there. So if I select just this one, there. So this one is a very easy in and easy out on the retime, and just to make kind of a nice smooth movement when the kid is actually doing the dancing. So those are the two types of retimes and the two ways to apply them. Again, you have the linear retimes that can be applied with a tool, or you can apply with a soft effect with a retime. Now, this is to my source footage. Now I want to create comps, or I want to transcode this footage. So if I'm gonna do transcode or the create comp, I need to define how am I gonna use these retimes on my exports. So I'm gonna start with the basic. I'm gonna create a transcode of this, because let's say I'm working with MOV files and I want to create DPXs or EXRs. But the important part of doing that export normally is maintaining the amount of frames that I need for it. And probably I don't want to apply the retime into my transcode. So I have set up here a few presets for those of you that are not used yet to the export presets or the create comp presets. There is two areas. There is the kind of your default presets for everything, and then your per project presets. I tend to use the project ones when I'm doing this type of stuff on a project, when I decide that I want to do something specific for that given project, while the regular presets, I use them as my main way of working. So that's how I set up my company or my whole pipeline. Now, in this case, I want to do some transcode, and if I'm going to transcode the footage to do the work, I probably don't want to apply the retimes straight away. I want to have the plates with the extra frames. I don't want to commit to the retime, because knowing my directors and so on, I know they're going to change the retimes later on. So for that, I'm going to say transcode shots with no retime. So I created that preset. And what I have done is I have set here to not apply the retimes, to still give me handles. And I have also set to not include soft effects. This is because I have my burn-in in here, and I don't want to apply that burn-in. This includes soft effects, relates to all soft effects except for the time warp. And I'll show you that in the next shot when I do that transcode. So if I do this now, and I do that export, I'm gonna export, I'm gonna put this on my folder, right? So let's do So I'm going to use my transcodes, and as you can see, it's going to go and transcode that. Now, the important part of this is bringing that footage back, because I'm going to use it for the create comp. Now, when I'm going to bring it back, I'm going to bring it back based on the tag information that I just did. So based on that export, it has a tag that tells Nuke Studio where that file is. So I'm just going to right click, build track from export tag. And that's going to create, I'm going to call that track called transcodes and build. And now I have a track that has that new footage. And the important part of this is that it copied the actual retime to it. And as you can see, now I have the right handles that I wanted, which is 12 frames in each one. While on the original file, I had 23 on one side and 41 on the other side. And that has applied my retime correctly and applied to my transcode. Now, if I'm going to do the same with the time warp, I can actually just go and say effects, sorry, export, and I'm going to again say no retimes. But this time, just to show you the difference and make sure that when you include effects, you see that it doesn't include the time warp. Time warp is not part, again, of this include effects. So if I say not to apply retimes and I include effects, it's not going to include that time warp. So I'm going to export that. And it's going to go and export. I'm going to save that preset for a second. Yes. And while that does it, while that exports, I have no problem. I'm just going to go and say build track from export tag. And again, I want that on my transcodes track as without the S. And I think build. And there you go. So as you can see, what it has done is it has rendered the right amount of frames that I needed and added my time warp on top of it. So now I have my shot again with the right frames and with the correct time warp attached to it. And this is because I don't want to commit again to the retimes yet. The moment I want to commit to retimes is when I create a comp and I want to define how am I going to use those retimes. One of the major points here is remember that on the timeline, you're only going to see frame duplication for the retimes. You're not seeing full motion calculation on it. And that's a very important part of this, because when I'm going to go and create a comp with the retimes for these shots, if I come and create a comp for this, say create comp, I'm going to use create comp special because I'm going to select one of my create comp applying the retimes, and I'm going to use the apply retimes option, and I'm going to make sure that there is no soft effects on this one for now, because I don't want, actually no, I don't have any problem with that. So include soft effects either way, and I'm going to say create comp. And now I have a comp that if I double click and look at the node graph, now it has applied that retime by adding a no flow node that equates to the linear retime. I'm just going to put this on this side so we can compare the timeline to my node graph. So here we go. So now I have my footage with my overflow, and it's ready to render again with my handles and everything on it. So I should have again 12 handles, but as you can see now, this clip, this comp container does not have the retime as we do in the other two clips. Now I'm going to do the same for the case with the time warp. Just to show you a little bit of the difference there. And when you create this one with the apply retimes, one of the main things is it's going to create the comp exactly the same, but instead of having the overflow, it's going to have a time warp node. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention before on the linear retiming, because we are using offlow, when you're doing the create comp, one of the options that you have on your Nuke script is the retime method. And I can define if I want to use blend or frame or motion estimation or none. So remember that these will only apply for the linear retimes, as this is an option that is set for the offlow node. Okay, so that is the basics of the retiming and applying retimes or not for your transcodes and your creation of a comp. Now, the next one I want to show you is combining multiple shots into a single shot. And again, this is a very typical thing that happens on edits. As I said before, on this City Alley project, the guys at 1920 had to deal with this, where you have a lot of shots where there is one without, one with, one without, one with, one without. And obviously there are different numbers and everything else. And it's all about kind of making the right timing for the keep dancing. Very common stuff that happened on editorial. So for us in comping is how do we want to deal with that? So again, that is depending on your pipeline, you will decide to comp with the retime on your comp or at the end of your comp, or you want to comp for the whole length and then do the retime after. The problem is in some of these shots, you'll have, if you have these combinations, you probably will have to add those retimes either way, straight away, to be able to get the shot working correctly. So for that, you have two options. You either select all the shots. In this case, I haven't renamed the shots, so I'm using all the camera source names for this one for a moment. And again, I have one non-linear retime, one part of the shot without, and one with a linear retime. So what I'm going to do is select my clips and say effects, create comp. Again, I'm going to use create comp special. And the only reason is because I'm going to use the apply retimes. So I'm going to create a comp with applying the retimes and also applying the soft effects. And in this case, the soft effect, as you can see, I have applied a mirror effect that is inside the actual source clip. So I want to make sure that that is added into my comp. So I'm going to go and say create comp. And now I'm going to select which one is going to be my main track. And normally in these type of cases, I normally select that my main shot is the first clip. So it's the one from 87 to 94. I want to add a single comp across all shots. And I'm going to say OK. And now I have a whole clip that has all the stuff. So if I go into that comp very quickly, you can see that what we got set up on the script is my different plates, right? And because it is the same clip, Nuke Studio, instead of putting 3 different reads, is going to put postage stamps for the other 2 shots. So we only have really one read that then uses time offsets to set which frames we actually need on each one. So then the one with the time warp, which is the first one, has its time warp applied to it. We have the time clip set after that to make sure which one is the range of that. The middle clip doesn't have any retiming at all, so it only has the mirror effect. And the third clip has the linear retime, in this case set with the offlow. And again, everything set up. So now I'm ready to comp anything that I need to comp in the shot. And in this shot, I actually have to add some screens and do some cleanup. And I'll probably have to add a robot around here. But I'm not going to do the comping now, as that's not what the webinar is about. So again, this is how I just set up my shot. Now, the other option that I have for creating this type of comps is by using the collect shots. And I'm a really big fan of the collect shots. And the reason why is because I can pre-set up all my timeline and do a single create comp for all my shots across the sequence. So instead of having to go and do shot by shot or have to select these 3 shots I did before to create this, now I can come in and I have renamed all of this. This time I just renamed a single shot, retimed. So they have all the same name, which means I only need to select one of them and go into Effects, create comp special. And this time I'm going to use this preset that I created where I have set it up to collect the shots based on the name. You can also use collect shots based on timing. This one is very useful when you have shots that are retimed, but they are a stack and they're going to be a single shot, but you have elements that are popping in and out into that shot. Let's say smoke, or you have a logo or things like that you need to retime. That's the cases that you're probably going to use collect shots based on timing, and that way you don't have to rename them all the time. We can probably try one test for that in a second. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to do this. I'm going to include the handles. I'm going to apply the retimes, and I'm going to say I want to make this. Actually, I'm going to go into custom and 1001. That's how I like to comp. I like to use 1001. I suggest, especially if you're doing retimes and stuff, I really prefer to keep on 1001 to make sure I know exactly which numbers I'm working with. And with that, I'm going to create comp. And I'm going to say yes. Now, the difference here, as you can see, is that this clip is just for this size. And this is because this is the clip that we selected. However, if you actually look at the handles, this clip has collected all the shots beside it. And we can see that because the handles go all the way to 12 frames after the last shot here. So now I can extend that clip very easily to the end of that shot. And now I have my whole shot retime. And if I double click again, now I have my shot again, because it's the same. I have my poster stamps around, my mirror effects that are in the middle, and again I have my time warp on this side, and I have my O-flow on this side, and my comp being built in the correct way and ready for me to work on the shot. So that is the way to deal with retimes. I should probably show you, I should probably do one more, because you can also apply comps without the retime, right? So let's actually copy that one here. Let's just copy that and let's move somewhere, somewhere around here to the end, and let's paste that transcode there, and let's rename that shot. Just so we are gonna call this comp with no retime, and I'm gonna rename that. Cool. And I'm gonna create the comp for that. So I'm gonna go create comp special again, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna use apply retimes, but I'm simply gonna unclick the apply retimes option, and again I like my custom 1001, and I'm gonna create my comp, and I'm gonna say yes to that, and there. So now we have the comp for this, and you can see how even on the comp container it now has added a time warp on top of it. If it was a linear retime, it would have added the frames here, sorry, the number here for the linear retime. So there you are. That's how you deal with, or the best ways to deal with retimes and creating comps or transcoding in Nuke Studio. Okay, now I want to show you one more thing and one more tip, and that is related to doing review and monitor out. I show a bit of this at SIGGRAPH, but I thought that unfortunately due to the recording and being on the stage, it was a little bit difficult to see, and I really wanted to show this again. So here you can see we introduce a new way of doing monitor out with the A and B mode, which means we can do better comparisons. So I have put my monitor out tab here, and I'm using the floating window in this case because I'm just using my laptop for this presentation. So I have connected to a second monitor, and I have my floating window here on my second monitor. Now clearly I can now review what I'm looking at. I'm just press play and see that running or anything. But what I really want to do, and it was something that was very difficult to do before, was use not the active viewer, but I want to actually be using the A and B mode. What this means is I can send my active viewer to my monitor out. It means that I can zoom in or zoom out on my image, and as you can see, it moves on the monitor out correctly, so I can do review sessions with my artists, either using Hiero or Nuke Studio at their desk, or at a review session with a director using Nuke Studio, and I can start comparing things correctly. So not only I can zoom in and out clearly as always as I'm doing, but I don't have problems with the space between my image and the different ratio on my monitor out. Now, one thing that I really like about this is the ability to set up multiple things on my different buffers. For those of you that don't know, you can set up your A and B buffers by using your 1 and 2 in your keyboard. So I have pressed, I'm clicking on the empty space here, I'm pressing 1, and that's loading my main track in, so all of my tracks and below from the top into my buffer A. And now I'm gonna select, let's select just the item below for now, and press 2. And that's gonna load that in this second clip. Now, this is already showing me the comp of what that work was, and as you can see, I can see the wipe working as well on my monitor out, and I can compare the two, so you can see the difference between the final look of the show and just the comp that was done on the basic comp. So I can use my wipe, I can actually put this on side by side if I wanted to, so I can compare the two things, which is quite nice. Now, in the case of doing some more review and setting up your A and B buffers, one thing that I really like is actually selecting multiple things. So for example, I have here my actual green screen. So if I press 2 here, now I'm gonna load that green screen. If I deselect the key, now you can see now that the car was actually keyed and the hand as well. So we can see this correctly. See how that was done. So I'm gonna reactivate that key and see how that was on the timeline. But the nice thing is I can actually select that and select my background, and I can press 2, and now that loaded just those two elements, and it's mixing those two elements in the viewer. Obviously that's based on my blending modes here, on how that's blending, and now I can compare where we started and where we're going. And again, I can use any of the modes, either horizontal, vertical this time, and you can see on the monitor out is also outputting that correctly. Alright, and I think those were my tips for the day, and I wanted to leave some time for the Q&A. But before we actually go into Q&A, I want to say a massive thank you to the guys at 1920 that always help us getting footage for all our presentations and so on. So thank you very much. And the same to the guys at CG Factory. Thank you very much for that beautiful project. And well, hope you have enjoyed the webinar, and let's get some questions.